Hello everyone. Today I'll be showing you how to build a real-time chat application using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. The application will be a simple chat application where if we have two different browsers or two different cards opened up, we can see that users can converse with each other. Maybe I'll put them side by side here. So as you can see, we can send messages between the users and they appear color-coded as they should be. So I have it already built on a different in a different folder, but I'll have this tutorial folder to basically showcase this for the purposes of this tutorial. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up my terminal here and open up code, Visual Studio Code. This is the IDE which we'll be using to open up our folder here. So the first thing I'd like to do is to create a JavaScript file with the backend server. So we'll name it server.js. And now we'd like to create an API, very simple server, using ExpressJS. So this is what we're going to be installing. I have opened up a terminal in Visual Studio Code here. You can do this by clicking terminal and new terminal here. So something like this should open up. Actually, I'll close this console off because we don't need it anymore. So now I need to install Express for my API. I'll make it bigger so it's easier to see. Okay, so basically what I need to do is npm install with the save flag so that this dependency is saved to our package.json, and we'll type in express like this. Now this package is added to our project. We can also see our package.json folder or file, and this is our dependency. Now if we want to use this package in our JavaScript file, what we need to do here is we need to type in this package.json, which is our sort of application configuration, you could say. So we need to type in type and module. This is because if we want to use import statements like this, we need to actually have modules, JavaScript modules, instead of files. So this basically tells Node that our architecture used behind the scenes by JavaScript is going to be that of the not individual files, but individual modules. There are some changes between them. Basically, for us in this video, it amounts to being able to use the import statement versus being able to use the require statement. So the import statements are better for us now. Okay, now that we have that, let's actually import the server. So we'll be doing import express from express like that. And we'll be doing our first API endpoint. So what we need to do here is we'll define a few constants. So we'll say const port is equal to 3000. And we'll initiate our application. So const app equals express like that. So this port will be the port at which our local host will be running. So let's do app.listen at our port, and we'll also provide a callback function in which we'll say console log server is started. Okay, let's see if that works. So I'll type in here node server.js. And as we can see, our server is started. So that's great, but our server doesn't do anything yet. What we need to do is define some API endpoints. The first API endpoint that we're going to define is app.get, a get endpoint for the slash. If you're not really familiar with APIs and endpoints and all of the concepts of a backend server, I really suggest you go and visit my previous video where I discuss APIs and requests and responses, because this knowledge might be useful here Although, if you're not really interested and you just want to see some JavaScript and HTML and CSS development, you're good to go from this tutorial too. Okay, so our first endpoint here is going to be sending just some simple text. So res, just some simple text to see if it's actually working. So res.send, and let's say hello world. Okay, so now that we have this, our server is started. So let's go to the website, localhost 3000, and here we are. We can see that our server has sent back hello world, which is exactly what we wanted. Now, one thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to install a JavaScript package called nodemon. This will basically allow me to not type in node server.js all the time when I'm doing something on the server. The package will reload the server automatically for me. Okay, so we're going to install npm install, or actually you can just write npm I, that's the same thing, --save nodemon. And we're going to be running our server with that command instead. The first thing I'd like to do is to have our server send back some actual HTML file. So what I'll do is I'll create a folder called src, and in it I'll create an index.html. In here I'll create a basic HTML template. Here I was able to do it very quickly by just typing an exclamation mark and typing tab, because I have a very nice VS Code extension called Mithril Emmet. I highly suggest you also install it if you're working with HTML a lot. So it's really useful. So let's name the document my chat application, and let's give it a header just now, hello world. And to make it different from our previous hello world that we sent back, we're actually going to have a style sheet here. So let's say styles.css, and inside we'll just define that all header tags should have the color red. Alright, let's link that style sheet here. Great. So now if we want to send this file back from our server, we actually need to define a static folder. This basically tells our server that all of the files inside of this folder are for the client. We can send them to the client. So this is something that we absolutely need to do. Just tell our server that use express static, and it's going to be our src folder. Now all of the files in the src will be able to be sent through the API endpoints. So right here we're going to be sending res send file, it should be with capital letter, and here we'll have index.html. Just to clarify, if I had, for example, here a folder called photos, and inside I'd have a photo, like for example photo1, then I'd be able to send it here just by typing // and photos photo1, just like that, because the static asset here, which is our src folder, is basically available from here. That's how we create our paths here. Of course, I don't want this sort of folder here. It's not going to be useful. So I want to send back, of course, the index.html file. Let's open up our nodemon server.js. And great, we can see that this server is running with nodemon here. Server is started, so let's open it up. And as we can see here, we have a red header. So we can see that the HTML file is sent back successfully. Now, For now, I'd like just to focus on the HTML part. We're going to be writing some styles here. If you're not interested in writing HTML here, you can skip to the further point of this video. All of the code should be on GitHub, and the link to the repository will be in the description if you want to just copy the code. First thing we want to do is we want to define a main tag. So all of our, let's say, content will be inside of that tag, and inside of it I'd like to have two divs. Great. So in the bottom navigation, let's say, we'll have an input of type text. That's right. And we'll give it an ID of input, let's say. And here we're going to have a button, send message, like that, and we'll give it an ID of send. Right, I think that this is right here. Let's actually style our components now. So we'd like to have first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna define margins for the HTML and body tags, just to be on the safe side, because sometimes browsers just define these things for us, and we'd like to have the clean slate here, so to speak. Now, apart from having margin 0 and padding 0, we'd like our body to center the content in the middle, because it will look better that way. So we'll have a display of flex and justify the content to center. Right, we also have our main tag, which we will give a border now just to see it. And the border will be, let's say, 3 pixels, solid, and blue. I think that's sort of it. So let's see, our nodemon has restarted the server. Let's see what happened here. Right, so we have our container here. It's quite small, to be honest, so let's give it a width of, let's say, 60% of the screen, or of the parent rather. Okay, that looks better, but still we need to define some more styles here. What we want here to have would be to have messages and the bottom navigation. So in the messages, for now, I'll just create the first message. Of course, later on we'll be deleting this, but I want to see how our styles are going to work here. So div with a class of message, and inside of it we'd like to have the username and the date the message was sent, and below that we'd like to have our text. So we're going to have another container here called with a class, let's say, message info, and here we're going to have our p tag with the username, so class username, and let's say this is going to be Jake. Of course, we're going to change that later. The second p is going to be our date. Okay, that's good. Below that, we'd like to have our text container, so text container, that's right, and p, this is the text, so I'll have lorem 20, let's say. This basically made 20 words from the lorem ipsum for me here. So again, if you don't have Emmet installed, I highly recommend it to you. It's actually, if you search for extensions Emmet, this is the first one. You can download it and you'll have the same snippets that I do. So yeah, we have the first message here. We have the text container. We'd actually like to have a second message, but maybe from another user. So how I'll do this is basically I'll give it another class, and I'll say, let's say, foreign, because this message didn't originate from us. It's a foreign message. So this is going to be the second message, and let's say that it's going to be, I don't know, Jack, and he sent the message at 1 minute later. So yeah, I think that this works. So we can get down to styling all of this, and how I like to style things is, yeah, we already have this sort of container. I'm going to make it a bit bigger just for our convenience. How I like to style things is I like to open up the developer tools with the F12 key, and I like to basically style it here and then just see how it looks like and copy the styles into my style sheet. So First, let's select the bottom navigation container. So we can see I'd like to have this actually centered. I'll give it a display flex and justify content center. And now let's get down to actually styling these two. So this input should definitely have a higher width. Let's say that the width is going to be 60%. It's not going to have any border. And actually, we're going to give it a border at the bottom. Okay, great. And let's say that the text it contains should have. Okay, I think that looks okay. We're not focusing on the styles here too much. We just want to have our things ready. So this was for the input. So what we need to do is to have the selectors done correctly. So it was in the main and messages, right? No, bottom navigation. Okay, so bottom navigation. That's how we can select our input here and give it this. What I'd also like to have is to actually, when you go into the input, it has a very ugly line out here, this black rectangle. So we'd like to actually change this, and this is called focus. So we're gonna change that too and have it outline none. Great, so now it should work, and also our bottom navigation should have display of flex and justify content of center, so that it actually looks the same. And now we see these styles here. Okay, now it's time to style the button. Again, a very small thing here, just to make it look more modern. So again, we're going to select everything which is inside of this div, of this class, we could say. So the button, and we'll give it a border radius of 20 pixels, a border of none, a background color of, let's say, green yellow. Yeah, green yellow and yellow green sounds about right. The same thing. Yeah, we'd also like to have some hover effects on it. Make it have a background color of a shade darker than the green yellow. So let's just have it here. And also we need to add a transition. If we want it to basically just go slowly to this color and not snap to it if someone hovers over it. Also, I'll change the color of the text to white so that the contrast is actually good. Okay, let's see how it looks. Okay, great. I think it looks okay, and also we need a cursor of pointer just to have this extra styling here. Okay, that's great. So now we are ready to send our messages. We also don't have this styled yet, so I'll get to it. So let's actually style it here. Let's first style the first message. So the first message should definitely have, let's say, a background color. The message, because we'd like the message to float to the right, so I suppose that it should be in a different container. So let me actually go here back to the index. Actually, every message should be in a container, so we are going to just move it here and give it a class of message container. And we're going to do the same thing with a foreign message. So just move this here like that, and the message container is going to basically be the outlying container of the message. So let's have it here. Inside of the message container, we are going to either justify the children to the right or to the left. I guess that we are going to give it a class of just left, right? Because if it doesn't have the left, it's going to always, we have to move it like justify content to flex end, And the class left is going to justify the content to the right. So flex start right here, and of course we need to give it a display flex. That's right. Okay, that's our message container. Now it's time to get our styling message itself, which will have simply a different background color. So we have antique white for our own messages. Let's say that we'll have maybe something redder here for someone else's messages. So foreign, and here we have the message. So inside of the message, let me actually see here. We have 2 containers. Right. Let's just give it for now a border of 3 pixels dashed violet to see how it'll look like. And of course, we need to define the width, the most important thing here. And the width will be a maximum of, let's say, 40% of the parent. So 40% of our container. Okay, so let's refresh this. Okay, now we can see that this is actually working out for us very nicely here. These are our messages. So we see that the message from Jack is actually has a special color because it's foreign. And the other message doesn't have a color yet because I haven't programmed it yet, but it's our message. And we can see that they float correctly. What we're going to do here is we're going to style this stuff inside of the message. So actually, let me select one of these. And inside the message, we have the message info, which is definitely going to get a display flex, and justify content of, let's select from here, which looks the best, space between. Yeah, seems about right. And of course, we want some padding here, 0 pixels and let's say 10 pixels. Yeah, that will move the inner elements to the inside, but I didn't want it actually to move it here and here from the top because the margin is enough here. Okay, that's this done. I believe that this is how we're going to style it, and I guess that we're going to have to set a padding here too. So let me just do this for a second. Okay, this was our message info, right? So looking good. And the text container, I guess, should also have a padding. So we're going to add it here. Text container and padding of the same 10 pixels, 0 pixels, 10 pixels. Okay, let's see how it looks now. And perfectly, it has done all the styles correctly here. We see already here that we also like a bit of a margin here, so that's what I'm going to add. Of course, I don't want this anymore. And our bottom navigation should have a margin top of, let's say, 10 pixels. See how it looks? Yeah, it looks much better. Of course, we want to have this to have a color too, so let's say that the message will have a background color of aquamarine. See what's the difference? Yeah, the problem now is that our overlying class doesn't have actually the color we desire because it's overwritten by the first class. So what we need to do here is to make it important. And this way, this style will be overwritten. I'm just doing it quickly here for demonstration purposes. Okay, now that we have everything styled nicely, let's actually check one thing. We wouldn't like the messages to overflow in any sort of way. So what we can do here is we can actually add some more text and see what happens. Okay, so what happens here is the correct behavior because the messages stay. The width, they should stay, but they go just simply longer, just like in other messaging communicators. The one thing I'd like to add here is probably some sort of padding on this main container here. So that's what we're going to do. Just add some padding here. Let's say padding of 5 pixels in all directions. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, now that we're done here, we're also going to create a first sort of logic for our JavaScript. We'll say, let's say main.js, and inside of it, I'd just like to console log hello world, just to see if we're actually connected to the index.html. If I want to include this JavaScript into my HTML, what I need to do is go to the bottom body tag, and just before it, write script with an src of main.js. Now, when I reload my page and open up the console, here are the developer tools. Let me reload it, and we can see that we have a hello world. Alright, so that is it for this part of the tutorial. In the next part, we'll be implementing front-end logic and the WebSocket logic on the back end.